they can help make women feel more empowered.
If if anybody have any experience that you have maybe witnessed something or felt something when you were in school, maybe you can share that first, and then we can go into this kind of conversation about maybe how to fix that. But yeah.
If you'd like, I'd like to start the conversation. Um, Women empowerment really has a lot to do with gender and gender dynamics and gender politics. I mean, there's so many variables that go into it. But one of the ways that we've been working at least in EOP, is one, we always have to be very conscious that it exists, that it's there, and then try to figure out, okay, how are we going to counterbalance that effect that's already present. So looking at, okay, well, how can we mentor on along the gender lines, and being very conscious of that? Is it possible to cross mentor between, meaning people of different genders and or that identify with as transgender? So what you want to do is create those support networks, not only from the counseling staff, but also from the peers themselves. So the peer mentors can play a very significant role in reaching out and talking and supporting the students who are going through um, the reality of not seeing their gender represented in a particular field or in a particular profession. And what happens often is that they start to feel this isolation, or at times some very real, I'm not going to call it prejudice, but just misinformation from other folks about gender participation. So again, dismissing that those individuals actually had all the skills and knowledge to be where they're at. So that often can be questioned by people from other genders, not giving proper credit where credit is due. So just so for me, it's so important to create a support system from amongst the peers, the counseling staff, and even professors and teaching assistants, to be very aware of what the dynamics are when we're talking about genderisms.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. I know as a woman in STEM and having a lot of, friends and roommates that are in STEM as well, it can be really difficult um, not seeing yourself represented in the professors or the TAs or even just, in your peers in the classroom. And there can be a lot of difficulties of feeling like, because you don't see yourself represented, kind of that imposter syndrome as well of like, oh my gosh, am I good enough to be here? Should I be here? And then also, you did mention the word prejudiced, and I would go so far as to say that on occasion I've, definitely heard, friends and stuff being like, yeah, because I'm a woman, they don't take me as seriously. The professors don't think I'm as capable or as qualified as my male peers, and it's really discouraging. And that's part of the reason that the dropout rate or changing majors into a non-STEM field is so much higher for women than it is for men. So I think a really big part of that is to at all levels encourage women to continue their chosen STEM field, and to empower them to know that they're capable, they're qualified, and then as they are able to move up, they can be mentors to women who are younger than them, or in lower positions than them, to be able to see like someone else has made it, I could do it too. And having that representation, I think, is really important, and giving the space for that to be possible.
And I guess I have a follow-up question for that. What would be a good way to increase representation for women in STEM fields? Are there like,
I
sorry,
can
go ahead.
give you some opinions if you want. Obviously, I'm not a female in STEM. However, I do recognize prejudices that exist, and I do think that that's a correct word. We discussed that actually more than you guys might imagine in our faculty meetings in mechanical engineering, specifically because our student body is so heavily dominated. So we absolutely recognize that this is a barrier for all of you women, people of color as well. It's difficult seeing yourself not represented in the profession as much as the white male, right? So we have done certain things to try to address this. If anybody's here that's taken my ME10 class, we made this a very collaborative project-based class that's focused on developing dancing robots with children from Isla Vista. It's not actually just for you guys, but it's also for women because we staff that with members from SWE. And we actually are doing research over there, trying to figure out why is it that males are dominating this field so much. So there's been research done on this program asking children to draw an engineer before and after the program. And before, it's usually the white male with the pocket protector, right? But afterwards, being that they've been interacting with members of SWE, those pictures come out a little bit different. And people start drawing pictures that look a little bit more like themselves. That it can be a female, it can be somebody of color. And so that's been a really interesting experience for me over the past couple of years. And just going along with imposter syndrome too, you know, I think it's something that we all battle with at times. And I've certainly had those experiences myself. And I'm a white guy. So I imagine that you know, if you do identify as any type of minority in the STEM field, it's much more difficult for you. Things that help me, and I could go super personal if you wanted me to, but there have been times in my life where I thought, oh gosh, I'm not good enough to be where I was at the time, and then it was what really helped me was joining study groups with people that I thought were smarter than me, and realizing that in those experiences, we were all struggling about the same. STEM's hard. You guys are in classes that are very difficult. You're asked to solve problems you've maybe never solved before. And you're asked to retain a lot of knowledge. It's very difficult, and you have to acknowledge that, but also acknowledge that, you know, you're just as smart as everybody else here. You got into UCSB because you were excellent. And I think that the confidence, internal confidence that you build up is probably the most important thing to fight off imposter syndrome. And, you know, I've seen in graduates that have graduated from my classes, you know, some extremely powerful women that went on to crush it. And I think that it's an opportunity. And Chunzu and I have talked about this a little bit personally in our office hours, but I think that there's nothing more powerful than an empowered and confident woman engineer. I mean, you guys, companies want you. You bring a diverse opinion to the field. You have every bit of mental power that the guys do, but you know, some of my female engineers just see problems much more clearly. And empathy is not lost on a lot of the female students that I've taught, which is an extremely powerful characteristic as well. So I think that with regards to summarizing all this, you know, if you're a woman and you're in STEM, I think that you're in a very good position. And you should realize that while there are prejudices that exist, I think that and my, I guess, observation, people are starting to realize those prejudices do exist and are much more welcoming to females in STEM fields. So I think that there's an opportunity here for you. Sorry to talk so long.
No, that was really good. I think that really brings us to our next thing, which Professor Susko already talked about, which is kind of like the imposter syndrome, because I feel like there is always this underlying mentality that a lot of college students go through, and some people aren't even aware of it. It's just like imposter syndrome is always there, and it kind of affects everyone, especially when they first enter college. So maybe like the mental health peers or someone else could share their experiences on imposter syndrome and how maybe they confront it and how they recommend people to like get over it, I guess.
So I'll go back to starting this conversation. Um, one of the things that's so important is that we can't treat people like the victims. That is so important. We have to check ourselves. So it really starts with us, like checking our own prejudices and assumptions. And so that when someone approaches us and asks us a question, is not assuming that they're not getting the work done or they're not understanding because they're simply not trying hard enough, or for some reason they just can't do it. Especially reaching that conclusion that they can't do it because of their gender or because of the color of their skin, that really is problematic. And that's where we have to check ourselves and not make those assumptions and really concentrate on what is the student telling me. The last thing a person suffering from imposter syndrome is for someone to respond to them in such a way that they feel that they're just confirming their biggest fear. And their biggest fear is that they're not supposed to be here. And so we have a lot of work ahead of us, and that is that, one, recognizing our own prejudices and not making those assumptions, and really sticking to what is the student asking of me? What do they need from me? Do they need information? Do they need resources? Do they need to get plugged in with the student group? Other groups of people that are more understanding, with the age, with the gender, that they can support and really be a sense of real support. Not sending them to a group of males who we don't know whether or not they have the same kind of attitudes or prejudice against gender. So it's really important that we take the time to examine our own biases. And then from there, really looking at, well, what is imposter syndrome? Is it some make-believe thing? No, it's actually based in reality. It's based in that person's experience throughout their lives. And then they come to the university, and guess what? It's like they look around and they're looking at the interactions they're having with people. And if we're substantiating those negative ideas they have about self, then we're doing a major disservice to the students. It's like really important to again look at the reference point from where that individual is coming from. What is it they need? What are they asking you? And then going from there. But it really is checking yourself. I was in a workshop that was talking about even in the way we say things, the language that we use. I've tried my best. It's been so difficult. I don't use you guys anymore, because when you're talking to a group of women, that indirectly makes them feel left out just by saying that. But it's so easy because I've done it, and I've had to check myself. Like, nope. I have to use, okay, folks. All right, students. So I try to substitute words in there that become quote unquote gender neutral, so I don't further the damage that's already been done. And I know it's tough, but you know what? All of us can do our part to make things better. So sorry about the long-winded explanation, but that's been my experience. Oh, also, by the way, I forgot to mention my sister-in-law, who has been a chemical engineer now for many years, is from UCSB. So she graduated from UCSB back in the day. And believe me, there were no chemical engineers like her, women in the field. And I remember back then talking to her about the struggle she was having as a female, as a woman engineer. And that actually carried on, unfortunately, into her professional life as well. But the one thing she told me that really helped her was finding support from amongst faculty, from amongst peers, and she did find them. There was a male professor that she worked very closely with, and she felt this person went out of their way to help her, to really listen to her, to really provide guidance for her so that she could launch herself in the career. And she's forever grateful. To this day, she still talks about it. But yeah, and that's my 2 cents.
Well, in terms of imposter syndrome, Vic and I regularly do presentations as part of the mental health peer program. So I'm sure she has a lot to say about it as well. But yeah, like was mentioned already, finding mentors, finding peers that you can relate to, talking about your experiences and realizing that, you're not alone and feeling that, you might not be capable or you might not belong in the space that you're a part of. And then another thing that we talk about regularly in terms of imposter syndrome is looking at your past experiences and your achievements and recognizing all of the things that you've done successfully in the past. All the internships you've got, the grades you've gotten, jobs you've had, research experience, all of the things you've done successfully in your field to, try and remind yourself, like, look how I've succeeded, look how I've done well, look what I'm capable of doing, to try and kind of fight back some of those negative feelings of not being good enough or not being qualified to be in the space you're in, and recognizing that you are qualified because you wouldn't be here if you weren't. You got into this school, you got into that position, that job, whatever it is. And we all have room to grow. There's always new skills to be learned, but that doesn't mean you're not capable of doing them, and recognizing that you do have all of these achievements, and you got them for a reason because you are qualified, you are capable.
Definitely going off of or starting with Ozzy, going off of how you mentioned reframing your language and trying to hold back from saying you guys. I definitely agree with that, because personally that was something that I struggled with, because I was so used to being oh hey guys, or just using guys as kind of I've always thought it's gender neutral, but obviously it's not gender neutral. And so I'm definitely learning how to reframe your language and using more gender inclusive language, folks or everyone or y'all. And then going off of what Olivia said, I think for imposter syndrome, it definitely comes down to reframing your mindset. So by learning to see your looking at your failures and your success or your criticisms as a form of growth, and not something that defines your capability or that measures your self-worth. And also remembering that you do deserve to be at UCSB. You got in here for a reason, you deserve to be here, and just keeping that mindset and keeping that mindset in place.
I have some thoughts, and it's not directly answering your question. It's kind of answering this question and the other 2 questions kind of in a cluster. So kind of thank you for dealing with my scatteredness. I think first of all, I want to just name that I'm a cis dude, right? Talking about women empowerment. I just want to name that, right? And so also thank you for keeping your cameras on. It helps me, it gives me feedback as a counselor and a teacher. I'm very sensitive to how what your expression is, and if you've kind of frowned, then I'd need to expand on that further, or if you're looking bored, then maybe I need to speed it up, right? So that gives me feedback, and that helps me. So thank you. I think so one of my thoughts is if you imposterism can show up in a lot of different ways, right? We talked about language, hey guys, and that's really hard. I use like what's up my peoples, or like hey everyone, right? So those are some words that I use to get to adjust how I frame my talk, or how I welcome people into a space, right? It can also show up in gender or race-based jokes. Those, like, one joke in itself may not be a big deal, like, oh haha, that's funny, or that wasn't very funny, but let's get on to the problem at hand. But when you live through these experiences every day, like I teach people how to pronounce my name every day, every single day, right? And so like that takes a toll on my mentality, right? And so it may, like, individual things may seem like little things, but they end up being things that, for me and those that I work with, they end up being things that we carry with us, and that becomes part of our daily experience. And that actually turns into a big deal. Especially when in my field, like we talk about student retention and persistence, and retention towards degree completion, like the things that we carry with us, like as targets of these kinds of things, or as marginalized peoples, like that has a really serious impact on students, is people's ability to retain and persist through whatever they're doing. In your case, maybe like how you're doing in school, and whether you're going to graduate or not. So it can also show up in like selection of lab partners. Many of us have been maybe the last to be picked, right? That can be due to a questioning of our competence. And so another way it can show up is, we might be one of the few or the only one in the classroom. And so that's another way kind of that may provoke that feeling of I don't belong here. Another one that I encounter frequently are students feeling like everyone is successful except for me. Everyone is happy except for me. Like, what am I doing here? And so so those are some of the ways that imposterism can show up. So I'll get to kind of ways to cope and to overcome it. I'll get to that. But another important point for me in talking about imposterism is not I avoid using syndrome, right? I get that it's something that is useful so that people can understand what we're talking about, but I just personally say imposterism, because if you feel that, there is nothing wrong with you, right? It is not a syndrome, right? It is something that you experience, and that doesn't mean that something's wrong. That's your reality. And so if you tell me that you feel like you don't belong, I will believe you, right? There is nothing wrong with you, and there's nothing wrong in feeling that. It's courageous to name it and to be honest about what you're going through, right? And to tell someone else. That takes courage. So ways to cope with and to overcome it. There is no such thing as affirmative action. Like, we had a question of like, would it be how can we improve gender representation and race representation in engineering and STEM fields, right? Prop 16 would have helped, didn't pass. So that would have helped, is something that we should continue working on. So if you got into UCSB and you're here, that means you are already good enough. It doesn't just like, oh, I'm here because someone took it easy on me, or was soft, or I got in because of affirmative action. That's just factually not true. You are here because you are qualified. So base yourself in the facts. Can I share my screen? Will the host enable my screen sharing? I have something.
I just did.
Thank you. Share my screen. This will be quick. Keep a baby photo. This is me when I was I don't know, maybe 2 years old. I vaguely remember taking this photo, so maybe 2 or maybe 3. My point in bringing this photo, not just to lighten the mood, but I also mean to say, one of the consequences of imposterism is like those ruminations, right? It gets into your bones and it just becomes an unconscious repetition of I'm not good enough, I don't belong here, and I'm worrying about how do I do that, you know? And so, so the reason why I keep this photo on my desktop, I used to have in a little frame, it's in my office, is because I would never, ever tell this little kid, right, that they're not good enough, right? I would never, ever tell this little kid that you don't belong. Like if I encountered this little kid and, you know, and they were crying, I would do everything in my power to help them feel better.
You would want to see you.
So, and then, so when I look at this photo, I have to understand that like, this child deserves kindness, right? And compassion. And I remember that this child is me. And so a way to kind of cope with imposterism is to be kind to yourself, understand that, like, to have compassion for yourself. Another way is to keep an affirmations book. I have in my notebook, the very last page, I take notes on nice things people say about me. So some things that it's over there right now. Some things is like that I've written down is a provider of space. I used to like teach a lot. I used to do a lot of workshops. And so I would put like teacher there. One of the most powerful things that someone to share with me is like, Shar, you taught me something today, right? After one of my workshops. And so I write that down. People say that Shark are very thoughtful and kind and reflective. And so I write that down in my notebook. And so when I feel like crap, I turn over to that page and I read those things that reflect back to me who I am to other people. And so, like Ozzy, we have worked together for years, right? I think you are, when I hear you speak, I hear your thoughtful reflection and I hear your wisdom, right? I hear your compassion for other people. I think it's very rare to encounter a person that can put themselves away for a minute and make space for someone else. That's very rare and is totally, that's very needed in our society today. So thank you for doing that. I've seen you do it and I've seen you do it consistently. So thank you. Right. And if Ozzy was keeping this book, he might write that down. And I truly mean that, right? That's like I'm not blowing hot air or BSing you. It's like, I really mean that. So, so keep an affirmations book and keep track of what people reflect back to you. And for the women and females and gender non-conforming people in the group, find your femtor. Don't just find a mentor, right? Find your femtor. Because that stuff matters. You need someone that can understand your experiences. Representation won't save us necessarily, but there are things that we can do that are important and that will help. So, so anyway, sorry to be so long-winded. That's my kind of like mental dump for right now.
Thank you. That was really insightful. To like that applies to everyone. I think it really means a lot to the people who are listening, and it means a lot to us too, just like because these are experiences we encounter too. I guess we should move on to our next topic, which is just that another issue engineers often face is just creating healthy, balanced workloads, because I think, as we all know, 4 units in a GE class is often really different from 4 units of an engineering class, especially like an engineering operative. So how can students create a balance between all these rigorous courses while still having time to socialize and join clubs they're interested in and making professional connections and just giving themselves enough like personal time too?
I hope you all don't mind. I'll go first on this one too. I got to tell you folks, I started my career at UCSB is in the College of Engineering. I was electrical engineering. And the reason why I share that, because when I was in engineering, I felt overwhelmed all the time. I really felt like, man, I cannot keep up with this work. It almost started to convince myself that it took me twice the time that it did than everyone else just to get one homework set done for calculus. So I would really rack my brain about that. So I've spent a lot of time, even to this day, looking at, well, what do the experts say about learning and the learning process, and how do we acquire knowledge, and how do we retain knowledge? I really think about these things. And it's fitting that today we're talking about, on the one hand, imposter syndrome and how to combat that. And then on top of that, also talking about, well, how do we manage and balance everything? And I got to tell you, folks, there is no one way to do it, because what works effectively for one individual may not work effectively for someone else. However, there are some standard things we can do, right? Like keeping a calendar. I personally, in my office, use 3 different planners. One is an overall academic planner that charts your 4 years of education, or 2 years if you are a transfer. The second chart I keep is a quarterly planner and a weekly planner. So when I work with students, I talk to them to raise their consciousness about where their time is going. And at the same time, try to get them to think about things like, what about my mental health? Am I getting enough sleep? So that, because studies have shown, if you don't get enough sleep, if you don't eat properly, your nutrition, your brain is going to suffer. So it's like, it's having that conversation with them. Like, these are some tools I use and have taught other people to use, and I'd like to tell you about them. But always reminding the student, you need to try to prioritize yourself as the most important person in your life. And so you come first, and you have to be selfish that way. Me first. And you have to think about yourself that way. And so you have to think about me. How do I take care of me? That whole idea about self-care is, I didn't create that term. That comes from our counseling and psychological services unit. Self-care has the academic element, the physical element, and the psychological, emotional element. And it's so important that when we talk about academics and keeping a balance, we also have to think about balancing the other parts of our lives that are equally as important to our success overall. So hopefully that gets us started on a conversation. At least there's my perspective on finding balance.
Yeah, going off the idea of self-care, I think it's, it's really important. And I think a lot of people maybe misunderstand what that means. I feel like a lot of times people are like, oh, self-care, like I'm going to put on a face mask. Like, what does that mean? But self-care is really, taking time for yourself and doing what you need to do to feel, energized and recharged and rested. And listening to your body, I feel like, is really important as well, because we get all of these signals, these physical and psychological signals from our body. Maybe you have a headache, you have tension in your body, you're feeling stressed, overwhelmed, all of these things, from trying to balance, work and school and friends and everything else that we have going on, the pandemic, all of the stress surrounding that, listening to the signals that you're getting and recognizing, how stress and burnout shows up for you, and then realizing, okay, I need to take a step back now and I need to take care of myself. And what is that going to look like for me? And just sitting there and thinking, who do I need in this moment to make myself feel better? How much time do I need to take to step away from whatever work I'm doing to really take care of myself? And even if it's just 5 minutes of sitting there and doing some deep breathing, or, taking a day off and, exercising or reading a book or whatever it is that makes you feel better and feel like yourself and feel refreshed and ready to tackle all of those challenges, but really listening to yourself and those signals and trying to figure out what you need to do for you.
I completely agree. Going based off of what Olivia was just saying right now about self-care, is that self-care is very individualized for everyone, and it doesn't look the same for each individual. And I think too, like, definitely a lot of people have this misconception that self-care is like, let me put on a face mask, or like, let me go take like a bath or something. And while that may work for someone, like that may not work for another individual. So like self-care can definitely be like, let me go take a walk right now, or let me implement breaks in between. And it's definitely about like, what do I need in this moment? Do I need to make myself like a comfort food right now? Do I need to step out of like my work environment? And I think like that's really relevant right now, especially being on Zoom the entire time. And like, I don't know about y'all, but like when I'm on Zoom, I'm every day I'm in the same room with my same laptop, and it gets really tiring. It gets tiring being in front of the computer all day. And sometimes like I don't take those breaks, so I do experience like burnout. And then later on, I'm like not really putting in as much effort into my schoolwork because I just have that burnout. And so it's really important to like implement like breaks in between. And so I really like try to like go for a walk every day, whether that's like 30 minutes to an hour, just walking around the block, just so I can be outside and like switch up my environment a little bit.
A lot of it is resonating. So thank you for sharing your wisdoms. I think one of the most important things for me is, especially in this remote environment, I think it makes all of this harder, right? Because we're not walking to class. We don't have that 5 or 10 minute walk, or usually it's in Santa Barbara, right? It's like the birds are singing, it's sunny all the time, like the air is fresh when things aren't on fire. So, we don't have those kind of like unintentional mental breaks where you say, oh, the bird's singing, that's nice today, or like there's good music going on in the quad or something, right? And so being intentional is super important. You have to make it a point. I have to make it a point to like look at something else. Like don't be staring at the computer screen, which is about maybe 2 feet away from my face right now. Like look outside, right? Like look at some clouds, and like something, just change your focus, look at, I don't know, like look across the room so that your eyes can readjust. And so you avoid that kind of like ocular fatigue, like in your eyes. So change your scenery, look at something else, go for a walk, don't be locked in your bedroom. I think that really works against students right now, is because your workplace is the same as your rest place. And so, it's so, not only is it distracting, it disrupts, because like if you're at the computer, the bed is right there, it's very distracting, because like I think about taking naps. And when you're in your bed, you can see your desk and you might be thinking about all this, like the list of things you have to do, right? And so, like, again, intentionality is super important. Change your scenery, take a break. Organization, that rings very true for me. Organization has set me free. It's related to, it helps me not procrastinate, right? If I have a list, and I keep a, where's my notebook? Yeah, I stay organized and I lost my notebook. Here's my notebook. It's a list of things to do. It's just a list of things to do. It has a date. It has a date, January 2020, and it just like is a list of things to do. And then I keep Post-its, right, for things that I have to research later. This was when I was, it's like petitions, and like I need to send ad codes actually to Professor Susko. So, so I keep a list of things to do, and then that's super important, and it helps me not procrastinate and not forget things. One of the most important things, take care of your body. Your mind will not work if your body is suffering. That means try to sleep. Try to go easy on the caffeine and how you like medicate. Comfort food is good, but I got like in this pandemic thing, I was eating too many cheeseburgers, and I wasn't able to focus on things, right? And so so take care of your body. That means good nutrition. Be careful, with how you medicate. I like to say, if you have one vice, that's okay. Try to keep it to one. And last, I think, is resist perfectionism. All of you are super high performing students. That's part of how you got here. Perfectionism may have helped with that, right? But it works against us in ways that it works against us in ways that are very like pervasive, because they can be strengths too, but it works against us in that so what am I trying to say? Try to tell yourself, try to let go of needing the A, right? This is not like high school. You do not need an A in your class. It's great if you get it. And I'm not saying like, oh, just chill, right? But like balance, right? Put like at a point, you have to say at some point you have to say, I can only do my best, right? And I'm only human. So do your best and don't ask yourself for any more, right? For me, I have to tell myself, put in my 85% effort. If I get a B or B plus on whatever project that I'm working on, that's good enough for me, because that means that I have energy to spend on myself. So, so those are my thoughts on kind of like how to deal with and manage stress. Particularly important right now because we're like getting ready. You may have been getting some midterms back, or you might be taking some late midterms, and we're kind of gearing up for finals week, right? So, so I think it's particularly important for all of us right now.
I'm just a little curious from an engineering student perspective, if Professor Susko has any experiences when he was a student, like some kind of scenario that he deal with stress. I don't know, just kind of application of what we just talked about.
Sure, of dealing with stress as a student. When an experience that I had when I was a student. Is that right, Chensu? Okay, so let's take it back to undergrad. So in undergrad, the best technique that I came up with was to get all of my stuff done as soon as humanly possible. The reason being is if you, and I think that I've witnessed being, teaching for a while, that I think I'd say 80 to 90% of students will complete the assignment a half hour before it's due. I think I learned early on in college that if you get started on it the day it's assigned, that's awesome, because once you figure out you don't know how to do something, you still have, if it's a week assigned a week early, you still have 6 days to ask about it. And then you can, ask. And if you still don't get it, you still have 4 days left to ask about it. So it really relieves that pressure. The thing that I think that the number one cause of stress is being under the gun and not being prepared. And the thing that helps the most with that is just doing it early. So I routinely do it, and I have colleagues that are still in that mentality of doing it at the last minute, and the stress helps them to work faster and harder. But to me, I hated the stress. So I just wanted to get it done, and I'd have my homework done at least a day early. And in doing so, I never once, and I tell this to friends, and I tell it to students too, and family members that are going to college, I never pulled an all-nighter in college, ever. And I never pulled an all-nighter in grad school, ever, because everything was done. And I never had to worry about doing last minute. All-nighters have been proven to give you worse exam results. So you might as well just sleep. It's better for your health, you're happier. And I think that if you can just get off to a really quick start as soon as the quarter starts. So for instance, if you implement this next quarter, as soon as the syllabus comes out, just read that syllabus, know it really like the back of your hand. As soon as the first homework assignment comes out, start doing it, even before the lecture content. I found that was one really interesting thing to me, that if you do try the homework before the lecture happens, the lecture is going to make so much more sense because you know exactly what you don't understand on how to do something. So that removed so much stress from me. The second thing is, like I said before, study groups. Study groups, just if you can just talk to somebody. So I'll give you my personal story in grad school. So I went to undergrad at a place called Lehigh University. It's in Pennsylvania, and I did a master's after, and then I went to work for a couple of years, and then I went back to grad school, and I went to MIT. And I went there and I thought, oh my God, I do not belong here. I thought everybody there was a genius. I really did. I thought, I am so outclassed right now. I'm, in trouble. So I, the first quarter, they signed, the advisor I had signed me up for, I remember it was advanced control theory and advanced dynamics. I'd never taken a controls class in undergrad, more or less because I was a cross major in business, and there were just, it was one of those classes I didn't have to take. So I never took it, and I went to do a PhD in robotics, which was really a brilliant idea at the time. And so my first quarter, I ended up getting, I had to drop the controls class because it was the third in a series of 3 classes, and there was no way I was going to keep up. So I dropped that, and I ended up getting a bad grade, a B in the dynamics. And at MIT in grad school, it was like half the class got an A and half got a B. And if you were in the bottom half, that was shameful. So that was just in grad school. It's not in undergrad. Undergrad, the grades were all over the place. And but I remember I was like, oh my God, I'm failing. I'm not going to be able to do this. And so the next quarter, and I had forgotten calculus because I'd been in industry. I didn't use that anymore. I was just doing, I was modeling and testing things and making prototypes, and I didn't remember any of that stuff. So anyway, so flash to the next quarter, and I realized I'm going to fail out of here if I don't, figure this out. So I got into study groups, and I've shared this story with Chenzu before, but and that was just an eye-opener because I realized that they're not all geniuses and they're all struggling. There's maybe like 2 geniuses. I've met 2 geniuses in my life, 2. That's it. Everybody else has been the same. Whether you're here at MIT, everybody's about the same. And we all struggle the same way. And that was such a realization for me when I got into that study group. I was like, everybody else is dealing with the same stuff I am. Okay, I can do this because they can do it, I can do it. And then I never got a bad grade again there. I realized that we're all the same and I don't have to do it, don't have to worry about it. And that's where confidence really comes into play. I think I learned that when I got into undergrad. I decided when I was an undergrad, I'm just gonna crush this. I think I can do just as well as everybody else. And I think that mentality is just so important. Being able to be confident in yourself is something that removes all of the energy that it requires to be worried. I think it takes a lot more time and mental energy to be worried. So if you can say, I am just as good as everybody else here, and maybe even better, sometimes you have to think that in your head too. You don't ever say that, but sometimes you have to think it. I can do this and I can do it better than you. And you keep that secret. I tell my son this, he's 7, he has to listen to this crap all the time. I give him these speeches. If you can go out there and just legitimately look around and say, okay, I don't see anybody in this room that's smarter than me. And that for some reason helps a lot. I've watched, and I share this with the capstone class too, usually in the 3rd quarter or whenever. I might actually be sharing it next week in lecture. But people that get very nervous about public speaking, the attitude that I'm going to crush this and I'm a good speaker is just so important because people are going to watch you. And the biggest thing that you can do as a speaker is be confident in what you're saying. And the only way to be confident in what you're saying is to rehearse and know exactly what you're going to say. You don't have to know verbatim, but you have to be confident in the information. So you have to put in the work. And once you have that confidence, it's like, okay, you'll exude it. It'll be easier. There won't be as much stress, but it takes a lot of practice. So I always recommend to capstone students that they practice their speeches about 20 times. Once you practice about 20 times, you're good, you'll flow, you won't have to worry about anything. And there's a video that I always show of a hitter in baseball, one of the best baseball hitters, and somebody asks him in a press conference, they say to him, so what do you think about when you go to the plate and you're about to hit, are you thinking about what's the pitcher's best pitch and what's my strategy and how is my swing gonna look and should I keep my elbow in or should I do, he says, nope, only thing I think about is I'm the best darn hitter in the whole world. I'm gonna go up there and hit it out of the park. And that's it. I honestly think that's the mentality, and that's really the key to just about anything. You have to be confident, and it's tough when you have this. I like the word imposterism. It's tough when you feel like you're not able to do what others that are your peers are able to do. The way to get through that is to continuously prove to yourself that you are able to do it. And you were able to do it because you got into UCSB. It's been said a lot today. You know, I've been blessed to teach here because, you know, my students are all awesome, and you know, I don't have to really do too much, and they just amaze me every year. I love it. But you've already passed that test, so there shouldn't be any other test to you. Now it's just a time to apply yourself and find challenging experiences and get yourself to the point where you can say, you know, I'm going to crush it. There's a great TED Talk actually on that subject too. It's called Fake It Till You Make It. So look that one up. That's a great one. There's a professor, I forget where she was from, but she gives a really great talk about a grad student who struggled so much with public speaking. And, you know, her advice to this graduate student was just fake it. You know, if you feel like you're an imposter, pretend you're not. And you fake it, you continually fake it until you make it. I thought that was a really cool saying. And then if you do that long enough, you won't be feeling like you're faking it anymore. So that's kind of my experiences along the way. But another other thing is, you know, if you do come from a background that's not represented, it's sometimes it may make it more difficult for you. I'll completely admit that. But when things are more difficult for certain people, they have to become stronger. So with increased challenges comes increased strength when you beat those challenges. So you can think about it as both a curse and a blessing. And I think if you do that, you know, you'll become even better.
Thank you. That was really well said. I think because it's almost 3, we'll just go into the Q&A. I guess like I already have a question, but if you guys do have questions, and because mental health is such a sensitive topic, you guys can privately message me or Chunsu the questions, or even one of the panelists talking today, and they can address it anonymously. So there's that option too. Otherwise, feel free to just step up and ask. But I'll kick off the Q&A by just asking all of you guys where students can seek help, whether academic or mental, just when they feel lost in classes or lost in school, whenever they face any of those issues we face. Because obviously it's like, yeah, there's ways we can prevent it, but we can help you overcome it, but it's still going to happen. You're still going to go into college feeling a little bit lost. You're still going to feel sometimes that you don't fit in place. So when you do feel that way, how or where can you go to address that?
Okay.
I can answer that. Well, because Vic and I are mental health peers at CAPS, so obviously CAPS is a great resource if you're needing some extra support. Mental health peers actually put on the school anxiety program. It's closed for this quarter, but we'll open it up for winter quarter at some point soon. So it's 3 sessions, an hour each, one-on-one, talking about how you can mitigate some of that academic anxiety, perform better, and some coping skills, some self-care, all of that sort of stuff as well. Obviously, you know, DSP is a resource as well. I was also a proctor for DSP. If you need extra time on exams, or you need, well, obviously, you know, we're on Zoom now, so it's not like you can have your extra, you know, room to go to like we would have on campus, but getting extra time if you need that. I would always recommend DSP as a resource as well. And then CLAS if you're looking for some extra academic help in terms of tutoring and stuff like that. All of those are really great resources that campus has to offer.
So one thing that, thank you for that, Olivia. That's some really good feedback and advice. One of the things that I do every year in terms of training the mentor staff is helping them understand that they could be a resource to others by helping them identify the appropriate resources they might need. And sometimes when you're first generation and you're the first one in college, you don't know where to start. You're like, I don't know who to talk to. I don't know where to go. But what I do is I train the staff in knowing, okay, well, asking what are the issues. So really breaking it up into those three major components. I always break it down into the academic component, the psychosocial, emotional component, and the physical component. And then I ask the students to identify resources on campus that address each one of those issues. And one of the most underutilized resources is professor and TA office hours. I'll tell you that right now, hands down. People are intimidated. And I'm like, yo, they're people too. They're actually waiting for you to come talk to them. So that's one thing. On the psycho-emotional side, there's health and wellness, there's mentors of all kinds at CAPS, there's counseling psychologists, there's EOP counselors, there's peer mentors in pretty much every entity you can think of, but it's really helping people identify those resources and saying, look, there's something there for you. And looking at it by category. The last one is what Professor Cisco, what you talked about is believing in yourself. And that's tough sometimes. But really, really looking inward and saying, I got this. You know, I'm the champ. I made it to UCSB, I'm here. That wasn't a mistake, you know? And just really pumping yourself up. You know, that's gonna be hard to do though, especially when you've been getting knocked down all your life. But it's necessary. Anyways, I better stop now and give someone else a chance. Thank you.
I'll second the office hour thing. Not only is that going to be helpful to you for getting through the class material, it also helps professors know you. So, you know, there are times when, you know, there's somebody who reaches out to me and says, hey, you know anybody that's really good in X skill? Oh yeah, I know Chunzu, so because we talked and I think that she would be a great fit because I know who she is. It's a lot harder to do that when you just are a name, especially in this remote format. It's awful. It's you know, when we lecture, a lot of times it's just black screens. I don't even know who's on the other side of that screen. I just see names and it's black screens. And it's actually a whole lot more engaging for me when I can talk to students. That's the entire reason that I do what I do, is because I get fulfillment out of influencing young people that are jumping off their careers. It's really fun for me to do that. And if it's just a bunch of black screens, it's not very fun. So I like it when people come and talk, and if they're having problems, I like to give rah-rah speeches before presentations or anything like that. So you know, come and see go to see your professors, all of them. I know all of them. They're all happy to talk to you, and that's you know, they chose this profession for a reason, and it's generally that reason is you. So yep. Ooh, another piece of advice. There was something I was watching. All right, so I listened to Tim Ferriss podcast. It's really good. If you haven't listened to him before, he's really he just brings in a lot of influential people and speaks to them, and it's like interviews. And some of these interviews are 2.5 hours long. And he had like Bob Iger, who was the CEO of Disney, on there. He had Arnold Schwarzenegger. He has all kind of people, and they all give you kind of their life experiences. So it's kind of fun. It's like doing this except with like really, really different and interesting people. And one of them, I forget his background, but I just remember his advice is he keeps a resume, and it's not a resume of his accomplishments, but of a resume of his failures, because he figures that there's a certain number of failures that you need to go through before you get to successes, and that that your life and your successes are measured more by your failures and your challenges than your actual things that went right. You know, sometimes think about like basketball, and you're shooting, and I do this with my son all the time too. He shoots, and if he misses, he gets discouraged. But sometimes it's not about making it, because there's a certain amount of luck that goes into actually making it. But actually, you know, forming that shot and missing, but you're, you know, working on your form when you're missing, is actually more advantageous for your development than making the shot and chucking it over your head backwards. So you know, making a resume for yourself and sharing all the times that you failed is a good way to promote self-growth, because you're not necessarily I guess, giving yourself props for succeeding, you're giving yourself props for trying and not necessarily doing as well as you thought you would. So yeah, those are some other interesting things.
That's something I haven't thought of before. Keeping a resume of my failures. That's interesting. I got to think about that. I used to tell people, you know, I'm not, I'm not very competent. I'm not this, I'm not that, but I promise that I'll always try, and that's something that I can do. And so that's what came to mind when Dr. Sesko, you were talking about, like you work on your form and making the shot kind of is incidental, right? The point is that you're practicing and that you're trying, and that rings very true for me. So thank you for sharing that. I also second the point of, you know, inside my head, I have to sound arrogant, right? I also play sports, played sports. And so I have to see myself, like visualization is a part of not only playing sports, but like how you present, right? And doing presentations, and it's related to an academic performance and so on. So like, if you can imagine yourself like I also play music. So like, if I can imagine myself like playing a song, right, and just knocking it out of the park, if I can see myself, I play soccer. If I can see myself like on the field and I'm running and I can fire the ball from the top of the penalty box and I see it go in and hit the target, that helps me actually do that in the game. And so if I can't see it in my head, then it's not going. It's more unlikely to happen, less likely to happen. So in that vein, like do something else with your brain, you know, like don't always be doing school and academics and solving problems, like paint, write poetry, play music, you know, socialize, play a video game, like that's okay. Oh shoot, there was one other thing. Yeah, I have to like build myself. If I sound arrogant in my head, that it'll come out as confidence, like out of my mouth. So, so that's a trick that that works for me. Will you repeat the question, Luke, real quick? I'm afraid.
I think it was just like resources we could point students to, but
so do
yeah.
things that are therapeutic. That's not therapy, right? When we think about mental health, we think about, oh, I need to go see a counselor and talk about all my problems. It's like, that's one form of mental wellness, right? You go talk to someone about what's bothering you. But there are other things that are therapeutic, like you go outside. I think also with remote instruction, we're not going outside. And so like we can struggle with seasonal affective disorder, which is we're not getting the vitamin D that we need, which affects our mood, right? And so so go outside, do therapeutic things that are not necessarily therapy. Academically, the point is like reach out for help, right? Reach out for help early. It's better to go to a CLAS workshop, register for it, and go a couple of times and realize you don't need it, and then peace out, right? Like instead of realizing later that, oh shoot, I could have really used this resource. Now, if you're in that boat, then that's okay. There's ways to fix it, right? But it's harder. So reach out for help early. You have to be your own advocate. You know, like, I don't think, as Dr. Sesko said and Ozzy said, like, we are here to help you, right? I will big you up, right? If you need to hear someone say something nice about you and you're just feeling really low, come talk to me. Book an appointment with me. Show up when this remote, you know, nonsense ends and we go back to in-person instruction. Come to the office and say what's up, and I will give you a compliment, right? And then I expect you to write it down. Okay, so academically, CLAS is our primary tutoring resource on campus. I really like their tutors. I like their services. I like their director. I've heard really good feedback. I've heard good feedback from students. Tau Beta Pi is an honor society. So CLAS can help with math, chemistry, physics, kind of the lower division stuff. If you need help with your major specific courses, Tau Beta Pi is an honor society. They're high-performing juniors and seniors at UCSB that have taken the same classes that you have taken. Shoot them an email and ask if they have somebody that can help you with those major courses. Math, the math department also has a math lab that you can access. And none of this costs. You're already paid for it. It's just a matter of asking and making time for it. So these things are available to you. that can make a really big difference in your day-to-day life. And all you gotta do is ask. I'd like to tell my students, like, if it costs you 10 minutes writing an email and it turns out, then it's like a little investment, big payoff, right? You spend 10 minutes writing an email and you get all these resources, right? All it cost you was 10 minutes. And then if you email, I don't know, if you email me and then I have to refer you somewhere else because what you're asking about is like not necessarily in my lane. And you'd be like, oh, it's disappointing, right? But all it cost you was 10 minutes and now you have a lead about where to go, right? And if you want me to ask on your behalf, I can do that, right? I can hand you off to where you need to go. So if you feel like you would like to meet with a counselor, I can, but you think you feel overwhelmed and you don't want to email CAPS, like I can email for you, right? But you have to ask me to do that. If you think that if you're feeling like you need to, if you'd like to connect with Ozzy, but whatever, you can't find his email or something, or you feel like, oh, Ozzy is scary for some reason. He's not, first of all. And second of all, like if you need to connect with someone, I can facilitate that for you. That's the point I'm trying to make. So, so those are some things about how to access the resources that are available to you, how to be your own advocate.
All right. Thank you so much for everybody's talks. Like, I think it really helped a lot. And I know we are going over time. There is one question that a student asked that I want to bring up. And after that, I think we will just end it there. But the question is, what is one thing that you tell yourself to motivate yourself to get work done early? One thing, I guess. Like, I mean, for me, I guess it'll be food. Let's get this done so I can go get food. But
I like to do morning affirmations where I just sit there with my eyes closed for a few minutes and just repeat some things. I'm capable, I'm confident, I'm qualified, I'm open to new experiences today. So even if I have to, do some work that I feel a little concerned about, maybe I don't feel qualified to do it. Maybe it's a new skill I haven't tried yet. Saying those things to myself, giving that positive visualization of sitting down, doing that assignment and having it go well, I think can be really beneficial. It would be a great thing for everyone to try.
Yeah, and the way that I always did it, where it was just by setting a habit. Habits are actually quite easy to form. It takes about 15 days to form a habit. So if you do something for 15 days, so the next quarter, this habit of 2-3 weeks, you only need about 3 weeks this, and you get into a routine. Schedule and then block it. So I got class at 11, so 1, so from 9 to 11.
Professor Susko, I think you're cutting out a little bit.
Sorry, I understand that section.
You're having audio issues. I think the last thing I heard you say was it takes 15 days to form a habit.
Yeah, it's about okay. Can you hear me better over here?
It's better, yeah.
Is it better? Okay. So yeah, it takes about 15 days to form a habit in general. So if you do something for about 3 weeks and you force yourself, you'll just continue to do that indefinitely until you get really, really bored of it. But so in reference to starting your work early, make a habit. Maybe next quarter is a good time to start with this, or you could try to start immediately. But if you say, okay, I'm going to work a 9 to 5. So in between classes, I'm going to do all my work and I'm just going to get stuff done. That's on my, I think it was mentioned, I think Ozzy mentioned he keeps a lot of planners. And I think that if you keep a planner and you have your task list up, you can just start mowing through it. But if you just set aside those hours, and I block it in my schedule too, like hours that I'm actually going to work on something, so that I can just nail out the things that are on my task list. And if you have that schedule built every week, you're going to do it every week. You won't have to think about it as much. You'll say it's Monday. Okay, so Monday, I got 9 to 11 to do some work. I got class at 11. I've got 12 to 1 to do some more work. I'll grab a bite to eat or something from 1 to 2. I got another class at 2. If you just keep that schedule and try to get everything done, early, and then reward yourself. I remember in college, I had a great social life. It was awesome. I would do my work. I never worked past 9 or 10, and I'd go home, and at 10 o'clock, I think I had the advantage of living in a frat house at that time. So there was always some people around, and there was, something to be done at that time. So I would reward myself by going home and, hanging out with people. And that was my reward. And so for your reward, it can be anything that you like to do. So I like the mindfulness stuff that was talked about, affirmations. Meditation is underutilized. I started doing meditation in college. That was great. I found that I could just rejuvenate myself in about 10 minutes once I got good at it. So yeah, I think I would just get yourself on a schedule, get that routine going. And once you've got the routine going, it kind of just supports itself. I guess self-supports itself. Doesn't make any sense. But yeah, so try to get in a routine, and just get on things early. Don't let them lag. And then come see me in office hours when you're in my class, and then we can talk about what you didn't understand.
I like everything that's been said, and I'm giving it my big amen to that. Thank you so much. For me, I like using this idea that there's a book that was written years ago. It's a short little book called "Everything I Learned in Kindergarten." And one thing I learned from that little book is that ever since we were children, we were rewarded for good behavior. But somehow along the line, when we became adults, we stopped rewarding ourselves. So I would always tell myself, okay, I cannot engage in this activity over here until I finish some work. And that way it became something I looked forward to. So I wouldn't game until I finished certain chapters of work, then I could game. And then I would have limitations on that, like I can only game for this much time. Or if I wanted to go exercise, I'm a runner. I've been a runner all my life. So I'd be like, okay, I'm gonna go run a couple of miles, but I can't do that until I finish X amount of work. Or I can't go to that party or go socialize, right? We don't call it partying in college, right? We call it socialization. So I would just say, okay, I'm gonna go socialize, but first I have to finish this task. It also reminds me that I like sayings or quotes, and one of them I live by is a Chinese proverb that says the journey of 100 miles begins with the first step. So I'm constantly reminding myself I'm taking my first step towards getting this task done, but it becomes a priority. It's like I'm gonna do this thing, and I won't let myself be distracted until I get this done. Then I can move to the next thing.
I can give one more tool actually that I used if I need a lot of productivity. You got a lot of work to do. I find that there's some days where I can't focus, and you probably feel that too sometimes. And on those days where I have a lot of work and I can't focus, I use what's called the Pomodoro timer. You can Google it. It's a 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off. And it sets an alarm for you. So it's a silly thing. There's actually a book you can buy on it, which is such a waste because all it is it tells you you work for 25 minutes and then stop for 5. So I don't necessarily recommend the book, but online, just Google Pomodoro timer. Pomodoro is just a tomato. I think it came from somebody that experimented with this method, and they would turn the timer to 25 minutes and then they get a 5-minute break. What that helps me do is not to let my mind drift, because otherwise I can check my email anytime. The email is terrible because you're always looking at that thing. And if somebody sends you an email, you forget what you're doing. But you're not allowed to look at your email for 25 minutes. And then in that 5 minutes, you can watch highlights of your favorite basketball team, which is what I usually do, or check your email or something like that. So I like that approach. I can crush a whole lot of work in a day. 8 hours doing 8 pomodoros. You could even chart, like, I think I can get the first half of this homework done in 1 pomodoro. Second pomodoro, I'm going to get the second half of the homework done. And you could start to break this down in pomodoro chunks. I've done that, and the productivity just goes through the roof. So that's helpful to me too. And it allows you to have these breaks in between, where if you're just like crunching and sometimes your mind is just drifting, and that happens to me sometimes. So especially when there's things you don't really love that you have to do, like you're taking a class you don't love. Sometimes if I'm designing something, I can sit there for 10 hours and design it because it's really interesting to me. But if there's if I have to do just like paperwork or something like that, and I'm just going to drag and look at my email, that's when I use the Pomodoro typically.
I haven't heard of that. I'm going to try that. Pomodoro timer, right on. My strategy is I have to have snacks. When I'm studying or reading or writing papers, you know, like when I used to write papers, I have to have like it's funny you keep saying crunches. Like I like crunchy snacks. So I have to, you know, if I'm doing something I don't like, then I get to have something I like. So that's something that that I use. Also, I'm a worrier, and I tend to worry a lot more than I do stuff. So what I tell myself is like, if I could just take my energy worrying and actually put it into doing what I'm worrying about, then I don't have to worry about it anymore. And so that's something that it's like a self-hypnosis thing. It's like try not to, or like, I don't know, Star Wars Yoda kind of thing, right? Just like try not to worry about it and direct the energy into doing it. It doesn't have to be perfect, but do it. Also, when I think of something, I just have to do it, because otherwise I'm going to forget, I'm procrastinate, it'll be too late, I won't feel like it. You know, when like that comes to mind, my friend told me, feeling like it is never going to come around. You're never going to feel like doing something, right? So just, so for me, what that means is do it when I think about it, and then I don't have to worry about it later. So Vic, I know that you haven't spoken very much. Do you have any wisdom to share with us?
Yeah. So something I think that like really helps keep me motivated is just like having a lot of self-discipline. So like as mentioned by like some of y'all, like getting to your tasks so that you can reward yourself, whether, you know, before COVID was like going to a social or to hang out with friends. And so I think that's like definitely really important. And that's kind of something that helps motivate me, is just like telling myself that there is some sort of like reward at the end. So whether that reward is like going down to the beach for the day, or like for a couple hours once I finish some assignment, or just like even not having that assignment on my mind anymore, that to me is an award, as a reward itself. So things like that like definitely do help keep me motivated, and just like having that self-discipline. But of course, self-discipline can be really hard, especially right now in the remote setting. But I think just like kind of like for me, because a lot of my classes are asynchronous right now, so I just kind of force myself and tell myself that they are synchronous, and I try to watch lectures at the scheduled times, so that way I'm not having to play the catch-up game later on. And so far it's been working, and there are times where I'm like, no, like I can just watch it tomorrow or later on tonight, but I just like really push myself to watch it at that scheduled time, even though I don't have to, but that just helps me so that I have free time later on in the evening. So if I want to go for a walk, or if I want to go for a run, or just bike down to like the beach to see the sunset, I'm able to do so.
All right. Thank you all for sharing. And we are 23 minutes over time. And well, first of all, my apologies for not being able to invite you guys in the time frame that we probably need. But on the other hand, I'm very thankful for all the rich conversations we had. That's how we came to be 23 minutes over time. So it was really helpful for me, and I hope that's helpful for the students who came today. And yeah, thank you all the speakers. That was just really awesome.
Sorry to
And
interrupt.
Yeah, thank you guys.
yes.
Oh,
Just wondering, are there any other questions? Because I can hang out.
For me, I did not receive any more, but if anybody else
I
has.
think that was it, unless you guys received any.
And let me also thank all of our panelists for donating your time on this weekend.
Yeah,
and yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you guys for having us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care now.
Nice weekend.
Thanks.
Have a good weekend, everyone.
You too.